Hi everyone, it's Maddie Brady. We're here to get real about mental health. Stay tuned for some great conversations with some very special guests. Hello everyone, we are back with Get Real and we have Kristine Auble here. So we actually met a little over a year ago at this point, previously doing an episode on eating disorders. And now this is something that is a massive part of my own story and my own mental health journey, but it's kind of a topic that I don't really get into as much as I do with sobriety and some of the other topics that I talk about. So I definitely knew I needed to have you come back on and talk about eating disorders and what it's like to be a woman in sports and the effects that that sometimes has on you.
Yeah, and honestly, I think our stories matched up where you had Patch Not Perfect, and I saw that when I was in the midst of my eating disorder, and I saw what you were doing, and I loved the name and everything, and I was like, okay, there's somebody out there, and it's amazing that we crossed paths, and now we're doing this together, because I remember seeing that as a little bit of a light of hope of okay, someone went through what I went through. With having an eating disorder at such a young age. I was, I want to say 17 when I really started to have the worst of the habits of anorexia. I just started on the crew team at my high school when I was a lightweight. And then I started the beach patrol, which we were both on, but separate beach patrols, but down in South Jersey. And being outside in a bathing suit, I think it just, with the combination of being in sports, was just something that catapulted me into trying to be so about my physical appearance.
Definitely. And it's funny how we even were able to link up, because I had no idea that when I put out my Patch Not Perfect content that you had seen it. And my mom actually saw a newspaper article of yours. I think it was in the AC Press and she sent me a picture of it and was like, this sounds just like you. And I ended up just immediately finding you and reaching out to you because I wanted you to know how absolutely amazing it was that you were talking about it on such a public platform, because I feel like for me it was something that I touched on in an Instagram caption or two, but I never fully dove headfirst into it. So it was super inspiring seeing that.
I appreciate you. I remember when you reached out, I was like, oh my gosh, because that newspaper article had just come out, and it was almost one of the first times I had ever publicly talked about it, let alone with some family and friends, and just because the stigma is just so difficult to deal with. And that article was about, I had started a support group through the Mental Health Association in Atlantic County. They're amazing, and I was able to start a group for anyone dealing with eating disorders or disordered eating, which is just more of a spectrum of severe habits that inhibit your daily life. And that article came out, and I talked to the person at the press, and I just let it all rip. It's this is it. So, and it was really great to be met with feedback like yours and stories. And then now we were able to see so many similarities. It was insane.
Definitely. I've even thought about more of what makes up that stigma and why is it more difficult for myself to talk about my eating disorder journey than it is with sobriety. And I think when it comes to sobriety or topics of that nature, it more so seems more understandable that it might be hard for you to manage more or less a drug. Alcohol is a drug. And I think for me, sometimes I get really embarrassed looking back thinking it's eating. Yeah. It's something since the beginning of time that is just very innate and natural for human beings. How did I manage to mess this up? So that it's something that is really hard for me to conceptualize, how did I fall this deep into destructive habits with something that you have to do every single day. It's part of everyday life. And I think for recovering, it's actually extremely hard too, because it's not something you can go cold turkey. It's not something you can give up. It's something that you have to continuously work towards and do every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we come across a lot in the support group that I run is the idea of family and friends trying to do their best to help you, and they say, just eat. Just stop eating too much. There's and you're just that sounds great. Yeah. But I can't.
Yeah, exactly. Can you tell me a little bit about what your worst looked like for you and when you really truly knew, okay, I have a problem?
Yeah, that was probably when I was in college and still working on the beach patrol in the summertime. And I just always knew that summer was coming up. And it was like my first year at school. So it was a really like big change in my life, which I think triggered a lot of like loss of control feelings. So I just needed to control what I could, which was diet and exercise. So instead of like going to parties, making friends, I was going to the gym constantly in the morning and in the afternoon. And then just avoiding any kind of opportunity to eat. I didn't want to gain the freshman 15. And then I didn't want to come back in the summertime with any visible like weight added on. If anything, I wanted to be thinner. So like isolating myself in that way just felt incredibly lonely, very depressed, just like it all just piled on to me. It wasn't until, and that was like freshman to probably almost my senior year. College was not a great time for me. Despite like seeing all like the social media was huge at the time with like your friends on Instagram. It wasn't until like my senior year I went to study abroad, and it sort of shook me out of my old routine of just going to the gym and doing the same thing over and over with like avoiding food. I was in Spain, and it was like all this food, and all my friends were like, come on, you have to. And I was like, okay. And that really like pulled me out of it. It's one of the reasons I really love travel, and why I really, that's something that's a big part of what got me out of it. But that my lowest was those first years in college and that transition, and just feeling so out of control that all I could do is control how I looked and my routine.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've touched on it before, but I had a very similar college experience where I really got into it same age, 17 years old. So it was a lot my senior year of high school. Definitely the fact that then that summer I had to work in a bikini. Yeah. Definitely added on to it. And then going straight into freshman year, I just took it to a new level. That freshman year was when I really, really was at my lowest with my anorexia. Yeah. And same thing, extreme over exercising. I felt like now I was in an environment where people couldn't really see what I was doing. So I was constantly hiding what I was doing, saying that I ate lunch, didn't eat, all of that, just the cycle. And I knew that at that point that I had a problem. I started to know that I had a problem within my senior year, and I remember having the feeling, and I think it's so important to talk about this because of this, I had this feeling that I wanted help, and I wanted someone to notice, I wanted someone to say something to me, someone that was close enough to me. And then I got to the point just within a couple weeks, my whole mindset shifted where now, okay, I know I have a problem and I'm going to protect this secret at all costs if it's the last thing I do. And then at that point, people did start saying stuff throughout that summer and leading up to my freshman year. And at that point, it was too late. I did not care if I heard someone was talking about it, stop speaking to them. It's a very lonely disease where you do completely isolate yourself. And I think that's a common misconception, is that people think that people that are involved in eating disorders are super self-obsessed and really into themselves to the point that they're just doing it. There's a common misconception of the Paris Hilton type where it's you just think that girl is so self-absorbed and so self-obsessed. Like always in the mirror.
Yes. For all the wrong reasons.
Really, you're so deeply insecure that that's why you're doing it. You couldn't possibly love yourself and put your body through what you're putting it through, being absolutely starving at all times, leading into other eating disorders. So mine started with anorexia, ended up going into bulimia. I really touched on every step of the road. I was bulimic while being anorexic, then got into the trying to just fix myself because I would refuse help and I would try to fix myself, would try to eat normally, was still bulimic. Very end of my journey was binge eating and bulimic. But I mean, nobody that is in a place where they're okay with their self would ever put their bodies through that pain and that destruction.
I think you absolutely like nailed it with that statement. That's it exactly. And you don't know it at the time, but it is an absolute like just portrayal of not having the self-worth to take care of yourself in the most like basic ways, which is very difficult to come back from.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how did you go about getting help? Do you remember the instance when you first spoke to somebody about it, or the very first person you told?
Yeah, that's why I think support groups are so amazing, and why I decided to start one is I started seeing a therapist in 2020. The pandemic helped me like slow down if it did anything. And that therapist, she had noticed from just me talking to her how isolated I was. She's like, who are your friends? And like, what do you do with them? And she was like, I think you need to go talk to people. And she recommended a space at the Mental Health Association that was just for anyone who's 18 to 30. And they still have this group, which is amazing. It's called Rising Minds. I love it a lot. But I went there and it was just people my age who would just like to talk about general mental health things. And after going a few times virtually, I felt comfortable to sort of get a little bit deeper than I'd ever gotten with people. I was like, I'll never see these strangers in the real world. Yeah. So I thought, why not like start talking about what I really knew? Like I just said to them, I was like, I had an eating disorder and I just don't know why, because my life looks so perfect and I don't know why I did this. And it was just really eye-opening because I wasn't met with like the like, oh gosh, like, you know, some of my friends or people who weren't equipped to handle it. These were people who had their own mental health challenges and were looking for just mutual like kindness and support. And they were like, I hear you. That's so valid. And after more and more talking about that in the group, one of the facilitators of that group was like, you know, we don't have anything specific for what you've been through at our association. So we'd love to have, like, if you feel comfortable with your recovery, you could start running one. And I was like, yeah, I would love to do that. But what really got me the help that I needed and onto this path of like really focusing in on the eating disorder was peer support and talking to a therapist in the first place, and just being like getting rid of that shame that surrounds like what I was going through, because I just felt like someone was gonna like tell me I'm crazy or like lock me away, or I was like, this is gonna be, you know, I'm gonna embarrass everyone in my family. It was a lot of like fear, but really had to face it at that time.
Absolutely. And that's something, when you start to speak about it, you realize how many people have actually been through it.
Yeah.
I remember being a female lifeguard, a girl older than me was publicly talking about recovering from an eating disorder, and we were sitting with a guy as well, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like, why is she talking about this?
Yeah.
What's wrong with her? Like, how is she speaking about this out loud?
Yeah.
And I was inspired. I was confused. I didn't know what was going on because I never heard people publicly talk about this.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important to have it be a topic that I continuously bring up, because I felt like at that age, there was no one older than me speaking about it or doing things on public platforms or acknowledging that they went through it, when in reality, looking into the woman athlete community, a lot of people have been through it. I know it's absolutely massive in the running community, which I was in, and that's one of the first people I opened up to was my best friend, who is a runner, and I knew I could open up to her because she ran collegiately, and I mean, you're constantly surrounded by people going through these problems. And then you start to look at other sports like rowing, where you have to have be weighed. Fighting, you have to be weighed. There's so many other sports, swimming, that it trickles into. You're constantly in your bathing suit. And we've talked about before, it's sad because at first it works. And I think that's how you get so sucked in. At first you start to do really well. When I first started dropping weight, I started getting faster and faster and faster, and I was absolutely loving it because I felt like I finally found the secret to get better. And then it works until it doesn't.
Oh yeah.
And then it just absolutely blows up. And I remember always thinking, when I realized what I was doing was wrong and unhealthy, thinking it'll be worth it in the end. Like, I thought I was making this epic sacrifice to be the best, to be the greatest, when in reality, nothing matters at all if you don't have your health.
Yeah. And it's so hard, like you're saying, is like, not only is there that general stigma for the beauty standards, but now you're also talking about athletics, where it's like a competitive level. So it's like where did that line just got so blurred of like being competitive and just harming yourself at the same time?
Absolutely, too. And I think you subject yourself to be in vulnerable situations where you can be taken advantage. I think it's very evident that people that, especially younger girls, that are so thin and are so not naturally, I know some people are thin naturally, but that it's pretty clear that they have an issue. I think it's very easy to manipulate girls that are in that situation, and really easy to latch on to them and make them think that you're there for their best interest, when in reality, a lot of times you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable situation to get involved with the wrong people.
Yeah.
Because looking back at that time, I cut so many amazing people out of my life and let a lot of horrible people in, because of the secrecy of that eating disorder just really opened the floodgates to people that I should not have been involved with.
Yeah, you saying that, I actually feel that like that's something I didn't even notice about myself, but I can absolutely relate with just the how vulnerable you are because you're just like looking for anyone to give you that external validation. Wow. Yeah. That's definitely at my point in my life too, that I have these like regrets and things that I still like I'm working through that I think are worth like acknowledging, that I was just, you know, doing the best I could, but it was a difficult situation to be, you know, just trying to like find yourself at that age, and then at the same time you're looking for someone to define you for you.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's really hard.
And you're looking for that validation where I know any of my friends or family are not going to be giving me validation for absolutely starving myself and withering away. Yeah. But certain people will. And if certain people are at that point in your life, they're not doing it for the right reasons. They're absolutely not doing it for the right reasons. Yeah. But I thought that's really important to touch on. Again, with a lot of, I know men struggle with eating disorders too, but it is a very woman-dominated disease, unfortunately. Right. Because of all the factors, and then obviously too, the looks. And I do think that at the time, that there were so many different factors. You almost need the perfect storm to have it all go right, quote unquote, that you're going to subject yourself to all of those things. But I do think Instagram at the time was very much saturated with skinny, ribs popping out. Oh, yeah. Laying on the pool, you know, with like pushing the ribs up in the air. Yeah. And I think it's important to watch out for, because I think that that is back in style. Yes. Which is such a sin, because it's really, how can that be a style? You know, how can being so thin where you're willing to sacrifice your health, how can that be a style that's coming back? And you see it a lot with Hollywood, and a lot of girls unfortunately look up to these people for the wrong reasons and are seeing that. So I just like to talk about that too, that a lot of it goes into what we're seeing and who we're looking up to. So maybe we should take a step back and realize that models, singers, Hollywood stars get eating disorders too. Right. And just because your favorite singer just dropped 10, 20 pounds, maybe it's not the healthiest thing to do.
And that they have different resources and like even now with social media, there's all these filters that we didn't have either. I feel really my heart goes out to the generation now growing up on Snapchat and growing up on these things and thinking like, you know, having a difficulty seeing what's real and what's not real. But I think you speak a lot to the, I felt like we were doing really well in our culture of like with Lizzo and finding a little bit more self-love and like that being a little bit more of like body positivity. But I know that society has a way of like when they see something, they go forward. Sometimes they want to snap back to the way that it was too at the same time. So I do get nervous of that. And I do think that like having this podcast right now and then this whole series of cutting through that, I think this is like one of the best things you can do to break stigma and just keep people reminded of like where they're grounded from and what we're in it together a lot of the time too.
Absolutely. And what do you think helped you? So obviously eating disorder recovery process, I think, is one of the hardest and lengthiest processes, and you're constantly growing and constantly trying to evolve and build on what the ground level and the groundwork you've already put down. What really helped you recover?
I think it's a combination of just like, I mean, honestly, you reaching out, like people coming back into my life when I was so isolated, just having good people who like met me on where I was. And then at the same time too, the Mental Health Association believing in me to run that group. I didn't, like you said, with self-worth and self-esteem, like it was really down low for me, and having moments where I could feel empowered and having people believe in me, just pulled me up out of where I just felt like I didn't deserve anything. I wasn't good enough. And having a few people that like showed me, just put up a mirror to reflect that the good things I was trying to do and the growth I was making, was very helpful for me. How was it for you?
So it was definitely a process. I felt like I went through every single stage of trying to figure it out and trying to get back to normal eating. And in the beginning, I think it's very much faking it till you make it. Just trying everything. I know for at least the first year, I still was thinking about food 24/7, still just trying to stop symptom use. So I wasn't using symptoms, wasn't doing anything innately wrong in my journey, but it's still, the mental thoughts do not go away for a very, very long time. And something that actually helps me a lot now that I've actually found within the past year or so, I read an article about somebody that did intuitively eating.
Oh, yes.
I definitely said that wrong. But so she talked about just whatever you're craving at the time, whatever you're feeling, have it in a healthy portion where you're not overeating it. You're not thinking about, how do I only eat one bite of this? And then you're not really thinking about food that much. And that's something that really helps me, because something that projected my eating disorder forward was constantly thinking about food. So for me, the less I think about food, the better I feel and the better I am, and the more thoughts I can put into more productive things in my life. So if I'm craving a certain food, or my friends want to get this or that, I eat it, and that's it. It's not, okay, I have to have 12 salads before I'm allowed to have a burger. And then you're constantly thinking and planning. I know in the beginning, something that I tried and failed at was meal prepping. I absolutely cannot meal prep. I don't want to meal prep.
That's okay.
Because then I'm constantly thinking about it. And I'm thinking, okay, tomorrow I have to eat X, Y, and Z. The next day I have to eat X, Y, and Z. What time do I eat it at? It's too much thought for me. And it's something, it works for some people. And that's something I think that we have to grasp too, is different things work for different people. And that did not work for me. Absolutely not. So I just feel better when I listen to my body. And a lot of times when you do recover and you do get healthy, you can listen to your body where, okay, if I have a burger, pizza, fried this, fried that, eventually then I am craving a salad and I'm craving a smoothie, and then I eat that. And your body does a really good job of self-regulating hunger, and telling you what you need, what you might be deficient of that day. Maybe you need a little extra iron, you're craving a burger. So your body, if you listen, tells you what it needs. And that's something it took a really long time too to get back to. I know when you're recovering, normally you don't have hunger cues at all because you've destroyed them. So that's something that will eventually come back. And I think it took me a really, really long time. I mean, I'm about 4 years out, and I feel like I just started to feel really good with everything the past year. And regulating my exercise. I went through a crazy ups and downs, I think, throughout it. Thinking at one point I was like, you know what, F exercise. Like, then you don't feel good like that, because we're athletes. We've done this our whole life. I crave extreme athletic pleasure. And I was very unhappy when I was kind of getting away from running and getting away from doing sports, lifting, exercising. So I think it was just really a process that the only way to get to the other side
Finding
is to work through.
And I think that speaks a lot to, not only are you like losing your hunger cues, you're losing the cues of your body of like exercising too. Like I know for myself, one of the hardest things I struggled with was I would still always hit the same numbers like for my workouts for a very long time. Like the food was one thing to tackle. Like you said, I had an amazing nutritionist who she did the mindful eating, where I did the same thing, where it was like just take food for what it is and if you want to crave food for a reason, that's fine. Just think about why you're craving it and then let it go. But when it came to exercising, I'd like totally shut off when my body was tired. It would be, I need to run 5 miles. I don't care what's going on, what I did today. I'm running 5 miles. Like that was what it was. And I worked with my nutritionist in the same sense. And she goes, so with running, she's like, let me ask you something. Do you even like it? I was like, I don't know if I do. And I had to re-question things. And she goes, and this really, really, I'd love to share this because this really hit home for me. She goes, you need to also love your body when it's not achieving something. And I think that's something when I was exercising and working towards being an athlete that I was always like, that's why I had like these wins meant so much to me. It meant that I was validated all the work I did. I was validated, but I needed to also love myself working just as hard, but losing, or working in the way that was good for me in a balanced way that was going to be just as good. It's enough. That's what I needed to remember. But I really did lose, like, I would just push my body to its limits when it came to exercise, even more recently too. Like you said, like I was at a point where I was like, forget exercise. I can't handle it. Like, obviously I can't manage it, but it's something that means a lot to me, especially rowing. But I had to totally reconfigure how my brain worked with it because it wasn't serving me.
Absolutely. And also, too, I just wanted to bring up for anyone struggling that's going through the recovery process, sometimes it's really hard because you mess up your metabolism. And sometimes you do end up gaining a little extra weight afterwards, or and just having to push through and fight through the uncomfortable feelings of maybe not looking exactly how you want to look or feeling exactly how you want to feel, because there are so many difficult steps to it. Because I know I initially completely messed up my metabolism from everything, because it was years and years of abuse that you're putting your body through. And eventually it does regulate and your metabolism can go back to normal. You can build a healthy relationship with the exercises you love again. You can build a healthy relationship with the foods you love again. So even if it takes a while, it's worth it to get to the other side.
It's so worth it to have that healthy relationship to it, because it's just more, it's so less shame driven, so much more genuine enjoyment. Like, I'll smile when I'm running now, and I never used to do that.
Me too.
I'm like, look at this sunset.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we said this in our sobriety episode too. It's something you can't cheat your way through. You cannot get to this point without completely living through the horrible parts. And it makes you more fortunate on the other side, but you just really have to keep pushing and not give up throughout the journey, because it is a many step process. And that's something right away when I stopped using symptom use, I was like, it's not going away. I'm still like, why isn't it just vanish? Like, it's something that we thought a certain way for me it was 5 years. 5 years every single day.
5
thinking
years.
the same way. And then obviously that's not going to go away overnight. So I think that everyone should really, it's so hard when you're hearing it, because people would say that to me too. Oh, practice grace with yourself, practice this. I'm like, I just want it to go away. But you will eventually get to the other side. And when you get to the other side and put so much work into it, there's no feeling like it to think about all the other steps I've been in. And sometimes I forget, and I have to remind myself to make myself remember how strong I am and what I'm able to accomplish, because how far I've really come on the journey.
And I think like you're doing now, like being honest about your journey, it inspires like the same in others. And then I just think if we can all just like see the difficult parts too, because it's not all like on Instagram and all other social media, like sunshine and rainbows, like the journey's like, no, I love myself. Like, we're in there in the trenches with each other. And that's like what it's all about, to have like just that one friend, like when you need someone to validate, like, oh my gosh, I really can't even look at myself in the mirror. And that friend is like, listen, you're okay. Like, and I'm here for you to like dump that on me, and like in the best way. And like even going to groups too, like, there's a lot more out there now, a lot of resources. One of the things that I love the Mental Health Association for is when I facilitate the group that I run, like that also really was like, I really gotta get my act together if I'm going to be helping others. And so that really pushed me to really want to do better. But at the same time, the Mental Health Association gave me a lot of resources. They put me in classes that taught me a lot about eating disorders. And it just opened my eyes. It's not really common knowledge for a lot of people. And there are so many things that like make you more susceptible, like that we don't realize. Like if it was taught more in schools, like we just don't have a lot of education, but if you come from lower income families, if you come from like a lot of more difficult childhoods, and then you get put into like really stressful situations at like that age, like where we were, it can really get you like that to find a way to control. It's an unhealthy coping mechanism for a lot of underlying things that we have a lot of shame where you said like, why don't we just eat? Why can't you just eat? But it's something that's so much deeper and so rooted in things we can't control that make it what we go through.
Yeah, I think a lot of times I would look back and think, how did it start? How did I get here? And there's one or two things I think about that really projected it forward. However, there's so many different factors that go into spiraling in that direction. Yeah. But I wanted to bring up too, I mean, your spirit and you constantly continuing to fight just does not stop. You went through another crazy difficult situation
I did.
This summer. Do you mind sharing some about that?
No, this is this is one of the first times like more publicly I'm talking about it, and I'm so grateful it could be with you, who I feel like super comfortable with, and who helped me a lot when I was dealing with it. But this summer I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. It was stage 1. And I had my right ovary removed along with the tumor that was with it. And it was a really crazy journey because I just turned 28. And you don't expect to hear about cancer from somebody so young. And I went in, I was on the beach patrol still, and I was competing. I had done a race, and I was helping at another women's race when I felt something really wrong and decided to go get it checked out. It felt like a bad episode of Grey's Anatomy where they came back after a couple of tests and were like, there's a large mass. And anyway, it all went from there. And thankfully I had really great doctors who they worked very quickly up at Cooper, and they were able to get everything removed. And after like a week after where they do a few tests, I didn't have to do chemo or radiology or radiation. And I consider myself so blessed. But it's just really crazy. I sat there when I was going into surgery, and I just had a lot of moments where it felt really out of my control. Because it was a large mass, they didn't know what it was. They told me, we're just going to go into surgery, and we'll let you know what it is after. So I was like, wow, this is a real moment where I don't know what's going to happen, when I wake up, or I have never done a major surgery besides wisdom teeth. So I just, I looked at myself in the mirror before, I'll never forget it. I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, I got you. Like, I'm with you on this one. Like, we're going to get through this together, to myself. And I'm so grateful that I can talk to you now. And it has so much to do with the eating disorder. You have no idea, because I don't think I could have done that if I hadn't recovered from my eating disorder. Wow. I don't think I could have looked at myself and been like, I love you enough that I know we're really scared. Like, we're very scared, but we're going to be okay. And all the work I had done up to that point just gave me a lot of like confidence in myself, to just like let go of everything else. But when I woke up and they gave me that diagnosis, but everything was good after that. I just did have a lot of like those moments where, what have I looked back and like, have I been living fully as much as I'd wanted to? And as much as I'd like to say that I was taking on a lot of responsibilities and not always looking out for myself. I'm someone who, like, in the competitive way that I am, I take on a lot of things and might not always take time for myself to rest and relax and go after what I really want to do. So when I got done surgery, I just made a promise to myself that I was going to take more risks, go for bigger things. And that's sort of like why I started doing the clothing business that I do now. I started doing it when I got done my surgery, and I couldn't really, like, I was still getting back to like walking. So my incision was right down underneath my abs. And that really was something that just felt like I got knocked back down to square one, like as an athlete. You probably had injuries, but I remember going from like, I was just competing in the beach patrol, and then now I could barely like take a walk around my yard. And I had to have a lot of mental strength to remind myself that like my nutritionist had told me, that kept coming back in my head was, if your body's not achieving, it's still doing more than you need. And I had to look at my body getting through the surgery as the biggest achievement ever. Yeah. So I had to really send a lot of love to that body that might not be running and moving like it was, but had gone through some very major things. So it taught me a lot.
Yeah, I can't even fathom going through something like that. And the fact that you said you feel like you couldn't get through it if you didn't have that past experience. I mean, that is so powerful because you were able to really go back in your mental archives and look at everything you've gotten yourself through and just think, I'm going to get through this too. So that is so amazing. And then the fact that you rode a race while having this is just absolutely insane. And not only just rode it, extremely did well, as always, as you, I mean, it's absolutely a phenomenon, and you just continue to inspire me with everything you do. That's amazing.
But again, too, it speaks to like what we were saying, like I was only so in tune with my body and knowing like what the pain was doing there, on my right side, and like advocated for myself to go like to the doctor and get it checked out. Like it's because I was able like to get back to those cues my body was telling me. My body's like, something's not right. And I didn't, instead of being like, I'll just handle it, or like, or just ignoring it or pushing it down, I was like, I gotta go. I love myself enough to just go to the doctor. What does it matter? You know, I'll get a little copay and then I'll leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it ended up being something that really saved my life in a sense. So I really owe a lot to what I learned from eating disorder recovery to being able to recover from this big moment in my life.
Yeah, no, that's amazing because I was thinking too, I wouldn't know the signs. I wouldn't know. I feel like that's something that we're really not taught.
Yeah.
So what would you tell people are signs to look out for, what to know, when to go to the doctor?
Yeah, for women's health, it's really difficult. So I think a lot of the time, like women have really high pain tolerance. A lot of the times too, like we're not always like taken very, like, you know, sometimes when we express that pain, it might be like, oh, you're fine. And I think if you know how you feel during your regular cycle, and you know what that's supposed to feel like, that's what I thought. And I never experienced, it wasn't like a cramp that I've had before. It wasn't like, if anything, it was more similar to when I've had cysts on my ovaries in the past. And even that pain is worth getting checked out. I think anything that doesn't feel, it was a very sharp pain. So anything that just feels like not something that you've experienced before is a good reason to get checked out, because what all they can say is, you know, just it's nothing. And that's the best news you can get. And going regularly to get to have appointments, that's something that I really advocate for. And I know it's a privilege though too, because like the healthcare is very difficult in this country. But if you are able to get to your gynecologist and get those regular pap smears, things like that, can be a huge help. I had already known the doctor who helped me at Cooper because I had gone to my gynecologist down in South Jersey, who's they recommend Cooper a lot. So I'd known my doctor ahead of time, which made it a lot like easier to have her taking care of me in a very serious situation, to know who she was. But yeah, I think advocating for yourself. Like if you think it's like something's up, I think you're right. Yeah. Nobody else is right except you.
Yeah,
like,
you truly know. And then I think it's so incredible too, after that whole experience, it inspired you to start your clothing line, which is great. I bought so much from it already.
My best customer.
She brought me these little snap-on.
They look so cool.
They actually go with this great. Really add some spice. But I bought so much from you that I absolutely love.
You looked great at your soberversary.
Thank you. I mean, with fashion these days, and fast fashion and all of that, I mean, I think it's so great if you're thinking of an event, especially because you specialize in dresses and really fun pieces. If you're thinking of a dress, you visualize a dress, you can literally DM you and have you make it custom, which I've done a couple of times where I think of a piece that instead of Googling everything, going to 500 stores, you're supporting a small business and supporting a dream. I know that I would rather support someone's dream and reach out rather than go to a store, go to skims.com or whatever it is. You're really, really making a difference. So keep that in mind if you are looking for any fun holiday dress, birthday dresses. I mean, you're wearing a piece right now.
I made myself.
It's always very sparkly, very fun. So what made you start that?
So I had an interest in sewing for a little bit. My mom, she used to sew our Halloween costumes and make clothes for us when we were kids. And I always loved Halloween. It was like my favorite. And we would just go to the store instead of going to like buy costumes. We'd go to the fabric store and she'd go pick out a pattern, and she showed me how to read patterns. And then when I got done surgery, so I'd made little things for my friends here and there. I didn't even have my own sewing machine, but I was at my parents' after surgery in recovery, and there wasn't much I could do. And I was like, well, now I have all the time in the world. And I had made such fun stuff for some of my friends when I was just like trying to have fun. So I was like, let me just make a dress for myself. And I the first dress I made was on my Etsy page. I have it now. It's my disco dress, and you got one too, which is but I love pink, as you can see, and I had these 2 pink glitter fabrics, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a dress. And I promised myself it was a dress I made for myself when I got back into the world, like when I was back to, because so much of my time in the hospital was like I would see like, life goes on is what was really hard for me to see, is that like, you're going through this, but like everyone else is still living their life. And I just remember thinking like, I don't want to be sidelined. Like, I just want to be back in the game. So, this was my like present to myself. This dress was like to be back out having fun. I saw myself at boogie nights, like wearing it. That's why I was like, I can't wait to go back out dancing with my friends. And it was amazing because I put so much like joy into that dress. And then it just kind of just like, I was like, I'm going to make a few more in different colors. And then I started an Instagram page, and now I started the Etsy, and I just had so many things come to me from that, and just so much genuine support and authentic support that it just meant so much. And sort of that became like what the brand is based on, is like every day that you're alive and living is a special occasion. So dress how you want to wear, make it a special day for yourself because you deserve it. We don't get a do-over in this life. We don't have a second chance. This isn't a practice run. So go for it now.
I didn't even know the story behind that dress. Now I'm so happy that I have that particular dress. No, that's absolutely amazing. And it's so true. Yeah. And I remember that hits home thinking back to freshman year and those times when I wouldn't let myself wear something until I was 0.5 pounds lighter, or this or that, and all these excuses. And there's no time as good as right now to dress up, to love yourself, and wear whatever you want to wear.
You've been doing that for years. I love you for that.
Yes, but yeah, your stuff is amazing, and you're so talented. I know with Patch Not Perfect, I tried to sew. I sewed a couple of the jackets myself, just the patches on. I'm not making anything from scratch here, and I would want to rip my hair out doing it because it's so difficult, and the sewing machine gets stuck.
Oh, that's the worst.
And oh my gosh, I can't even
rethreading it.
Fathom making something from scratch. So I just think that everything you're doing is amazing. I think that you're amazing, and you continue to just come back with more and more impressive stories, impressive feats, and you just really have conquered everything, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Of course. I'm just happy to be here. I'm so excited that we're doing this again, and that like you have so many new people and so many things to look forward to on this amazing series where I've just learned so much about myself from others. I'm just amazed. You're doing really great things by getting these voices amplified.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming on and getting real. And I can't wait to have you on again in 6 months, a year, and see whatever the heck you're accomplishing then. I can't even imagine. You might be on the moon.
You have to visit me there. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for tuning in and getting real with us. Podcasts will be posted every other Wednesday on Spotify and YouTube. Please reach out via DM if you want to chat.